So we are Tableau user group for the North Suburban Chicago area, although anybody is welcome globally, including Cincinnati, my favorite skyline-based city. Love it.
Good plug.
Yes, absolutely. I should have a skyline background. I've got some cans in the other room. This is the North Suburban Chicago Tableau user group. There is a Chicago Tableau user group. The Chicago area is big enough to support a couple different groups where if there's anyone from the Chicago user group here, you're more than welcome, or from any other user group. But really what it is about is more when things go back to in-person, right? The North Suburban one, guess what? We meet in the North Suburbs somewhere. And, you know, the people from Chicago don't want to travel an hour to go to us. And the people from up here don't want to travel an hour to go down to see them necessarily. I do sometimes. I find some value. Even Milwaukee, it's not that far. But anyways, welcome to everybody. Let's get to our meeting agenda. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit. This was on the meeting invite, so everyone has already seen this, but just really quick, I'm just doing a quick intro. I'm Alex Pataky, and I'll talk for a couple minutes, and then we'll jump right into Zach. Zach is on the screen. You can see him right there with his lovely, it looks like a blur background, but I don't think it is. I'm not sure. No?
Just an amazing blue wall.
It's a real one. And then Sedale's up after him, and he's got the fabulous degree-based background, which is awesome, and it's not fake. Those are all real degrees. At least that's what he tells us. And then we've got Jennifer Dawes after him, I'm sorry. And then we're going to close with a Tableau trivia challenge, which I will launch up for everybody. And we'll go from there, and that's going to be great. Now, what we're going to start with here is, a couple quick notes. First of all, where you can find us now, you know, I can put this in the, let's see, the copy link. I'll put this in the chat. There is a chat. And I'm going to say all attendees, LinkedIn. There's our LinkedIn, and this one. This is the community link on the Tableau site. So you've got both of those. So you're not just looking at the screen going frantically trying to type something down, but that you can find us at either place. I were to control click on that. Then we'll get to our user group. Oh, that's not our user group. That's just LinkedIn. Interesting. It's supposed to go straight to the group link, but let's see here. Copy link. Let me try that again. Oh, well, this time it worked. I did it a second time and it worked. Not sure why, but in any case, here we go. So you can always go here. We'll always have the posts about the meetings. You can see, you know, I've got a reminder down here and a couple notes about the meeting. But then if there's anything else, any of you attendees or members of the community want to post about anything related to Tableau, please feel free. The more activity, the better. Really quick, I'll say two things about myself here. Just, you know, who am I? I am not nearly as acclaimed a Tableau person as any of our panelists or some of the attendees, because I know there's a couple rock stars, and I should say Zen masters in attendance as well. I do love this stuff. I have degrees in math and analytics and music, actually. I do IoT, data science, analytics, and BI for Baxter. So I love, I've been doing all this stuff for many, many years, and love Tableau. It's a great tool. And there we go. So that's the goodbye message. I'll say it, since I already showed it, I'll say it right now as well, but thank you for coming, and I hope you come back again next time. One other plug I will give is for speaking. We have these wonderful speakers here today. We always need more speakers. In the RSVP, there's a checkbox that says, are you open to speaking in the future? I do look at that. So obviously you can only have so many speakers at any one time, but if you've checked it before, but you're still available, check it again. Because I do check that, and I try not, you know, most of the people I'm not going to know personally. until I've talked to them and had them present, right? Or have met them somewhere else. So there's no, I don't know. I don't think there's no intended bias there in who I'm picking to present necessarily, but I do look at those and try and pick, people who have offered to present. So please do let us know if you want to. It's great to have all kinds of different perspectives, right? One thing that I think is wonderful as a user myself and as a customer is seeing how other customers have done things, right? I think that's fabulous. I always love seeing that. But then also, tech tips and expert things and different kind of sessions acts is bringing creative energy. That's a different kind of an approach than just saying, how do I use, I don't know, row level security or something, which is also a useful thing, right? There's all these different kinds of things I think are super useful. And I think it makes it more interesting for everyone else if we have this diverse content, although you can let me know. Okay, take me to my poll. I am going to start a quick poll, and then I'm going to send you the link. I can find the link here. All right, now how do I get the link to you guys? Okay, I'm going to put a poll link in the chat. There is your link. I believe that should come up correctly. Yes, it does. I will show you what it looks like. If you click that link, you're going to get this. And we'll do one question at a time. What days of the week do you prefer for meetings? These are just general things to see what people like. You can say, I don't care, I like everything, or just which days in particular you do like for meetings. I will not show you my bias, but I will vote as well, since I am here. And then I'm going to open up the results session. So we can see live what's going on here. We've got 20 participants in the poll. Let me see how many people we have in the meeting at the moment. We have 48. We can do better than that. Come on. 20 out of 48. Come on. People who are asleep. It's not that early. It's 9:09. All right, that's better. I cajoled a couple more people to get in there. 23 now.
I like that you're starting the meeting this way, Alex. Making sure they're all awake. Way to go.
Click something.
Nothing like
yes.
forced participation to get you started in the event.
Little icebreaker here.
All right, so we can see what's going on here. We have 5 votes for I like everything, which is fine. The least for Mondays and Tuesdays, which I can kind of understand. That's when a lot of times companies will have, start of the week kind of meetings and they're a little busier. I imagine it would have been a little later, and Thursday's the big winner, as it has been every time we've taken this poll. But it's always worthwhile to ask. I'm going to capture that one. Let's see. I'm going to say poll 1. Okay, and let's go on to the next one. Next. You should see a question, what start times do you prefer? And we can see the live results. I don't know if I should even show you, right? Because then there's some recency bias and group bias, right? That can come into seeing what other people are doing. Oh yeah, I'll do the same thing, right? But it's too late. I've already started that, so.
It's Schrodinger's poll. Is showing it to them affecting it?
Right. Well, it absolutely does, I think, to some degree. How much of a degree is up for someone with a bunch of degrees to decide. Sedale can tell us.
No pressure.
Okay, that's
I would go. My degree is actually in psychology, so I could go into detail, but I want to spare you all of the sciencey jargon.
No, this is good. It took a twist today.
All right, let's go to the next one. We only have a couple more questions, but we're just trying to get these in. So this is, what kind of sessions do you prefer to tug? Right, and you can vote for anything you want here. This is just to know what people like to see at these kind of meetings. And I am going to hide this off the screen for a while and let people vote in the dark. So keep Schrodinger's cat in the dark for a moment. While that's going, I'll note that the start time of Zach, he doesn't explode if we're running late. So yeah, that's totally fine. We're going to take a couple more minutes and we'll get started. I've got 23 participants. I've got 51 in the meeting. All right, I'll start showing it now that we've had let people have some time to at least start. So you can start seeing what people are doing. Tips and tricks, what's new, and demos are our medalists, our podium finishers. You can see, I don't care, I like everything is only 2, but the lowest thing is the trivia challenge, which we're going to do at the end. But that's okay. Did I mention that trivia challenges come with prizes? I'll mention that to people since we have time.
Now let's wait and see if this vote changes.
Yeah, exactly. Viz challenges would too. We've done Viz challenges a couple times in this tug, which I thought were super awesome. But as you can see from the voting, that's what we saw the last time we did this poll as well. Viz challenges and trivia challenges did not get a ton of votes. So, seeing as how we're seeing that again, we may just pull back from doing that for a while. Okay, well, I think 32 is what we're going to get on this one. I'm going to take that. Oh, I had a couple more come in, but too late. Let's see, cockpit next. Presentation length. So less but longer sessions, more shorter ones. So would you rather
showing
see
us
like
this now?
Yeah, well, that's fine for today. But would you rather see 2 one-hour presentations and have that kind of be the meeting, or even 4 1 hours, or 2, 3, 4 short ones? Oh my goodness, look at that! It's a runaway.
I can talk fast. It's fine.
Well, no. What I did is I did schedule shorter, right? I consider a half hour-ish shorter, right? Hour plus, I would consider longer. But ours are 20 to 40 minutes. I consider those on the shorter end. So, okay, this one is a runaway bloodbath here. Let's save that. Okay, I think that's it. Let me double check on, see if there's any more. That is the end of them. So thank you everyone for participating there. The other chance you'll have to participate other than the Q&A after each speaker would be the trivia challenge, which, as I mentioned, not a ton of people apparently are interested in, but it does come with prizes. So there is a Tableau swag to be had for winners, and depending on how many people participate, podium finishers as well. So there we go. All right, so with that, I think I'm done talking for now. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to pass it on to Zach. Zach, I'm going to stop sharing, and if you want to share, you can take it away.
Hi, everybody. So here we go. My topic is Think Differently. This is about what's leveraging what is uniquely you to create business projects and personal projects that think differently. So, okay, that's not the right picture. That is my 6-year-old Evangeline. There we go. Okay, that's a good picture. I am Zach Bowders. I am a BI specialist at Jones Lang LaSalle, which is right in your neck of the woods. I'm also a Tableau ambassador and 2-time Vizzes Award winner last year for Must Run on Coffee or Coke for being prolific and all over the place, and the 2019 award for greatest growth. I'm also the host of the Data Plus Love podcast, which Data Literacy called the most interesting data podcast of 2020, and the MemTug co-lead in Memphis, Tennessee, which is significantly smaller than yours and has effectively been defunct during COVID, because frankly, we have about 20 regular attendees, and it seems superfluous to try to set that up virtually when there are awesome big tugs like yours where we can easily send our folks until we can meet in person. I also love data art and would like to get more into that. So in case you hear any noises in the background, this is what it looked like outside my house this morning. As you can see, it's a wintry hellscape, and that's why our local schools closed for the day to send the kids home for a snow day. Because it's too dangerous to be outside, and you certainly can't drive in this. And no, I'm not joking. That is what it looks like and is what happened today. Speaking of my children, they are both dyslexic and dysgraphic. I have two girls, 6 and 9. Dyslexia, as you see approximated on the left by that font, is a neural processing disorder. Literally, their brain is wired differently than a neurologically typical brain. And it's sort of, in computer lingo, it would be a garbage in. So the processing of taking in text and language gets garbled, and dysgraphia is the garbage out version of that on the right, where when you're spitting stuff back out, you may know what you want to say, but it does not come out correctly. And my kids have both. Fortunately, there is the Bowders School, which exists locally in my town. There's only 14 schools for dyslexia in the United States. Dyslexia exists, and they approximate about 20% of the population to varying degrees. But my kids both have it. My oldest has it far more severely than my younger child. But the Bowders School is unique in that they treat dyslexia like a superpower, because it is a different way of seeing the world, literally. Because you don't process things the same way as everyone else. You see things and think about things differently than everyone else. And they celebrate that with different houses named after famous dyslexics like Einstein, Da Vinci, Jobs, and Edison. So all 4 of those people were famous dyslexics. And they compete, much like at Hogwarts, for house points. And at the end of the semester, they have like a little goodies and stuff like that for whoever does the best. So whoever works hardest on their homework gets house points, whoever does extra credit and that sort of thing. So it's a way to sort of get them enthused about something that otherwise is a slog, because trying to get dyslexic kids to read is extremely difficult. You actually have to drill them around words as if they were pictures. So every night I would do exercises with my daughter and ask her, okay, how many letters were in that word I just showed you? How many of the letters are tall? How many letters hang down? How many nouns are there? What's the 5th letter? And also they teach the kids cursive right away, because that makes them think about words as a whole rather than the individual characters. And when they have to consider it as a whole, that changes their perspective on language, and it starts to cohese a bit more. So these are just some of the famous dyslexics in their wall of dyslexics. And you might recognize some of the names we mentioned before, like Steve Jobs and Edison. We also see Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg, John Lennon. There's been lots of significant people throughout time that didn't see the world the same way as everyone else. And in this case, that was because of dyslexia. But that opened up a lot of opportunities to them. So in 1997, Steve Jobs gave his famous Think Different speech. And part of that, the idea behind that was, if you were interested in purchasing Apple, it's because you don't march to the beat of the same drummer as everyone else. But thinking different isn't just about being, a little quirky and taking a chance on something that at the time was a riskier proposition. Thinking differently is your own unique perspective and what you can bring to the picture that no one else can. So you can skill up as much as you like in whatever software tool, but at the end of the day, so much of your ability comes down to how you view the world and the perspective that you can bring to things uniquely. And so I have 3 main categories. I'm going to break down some tips that I have sort of picked up from observing my children, how that you can look at projects and think of them differently. Mind you, these aren't business projects. I can't show you my business projects, but I can show you passion project that I've worked on and how thinking about something a little differently created a different kind of result. So tip 1, reject convention. Dyslexics can't learn the same way as everyone else. They actually have something called the Orton-Gillingham method they have to use in order to learn, which involves things like the drilling that I mentioned before. So if you were to sort of reject conventional chart types when you were trying to express ideas, what might you come up with? Obviously, you might not be able to do this in all of your business work, but you can say, think about team membership in a different way. If you're trying to express how many different groups an individual belongs to, what if you take the much maligned pie chart, particularly in the Tableau community, and use that to represent parts of a whole to a person's group memberships, such as here with Marvel characters and different teams that they're affiliated with? Or alternatively, what if we wanted to talk about color blindness? There's a lot of ways that we could sort of represent color blindness. We typically think in the data community of always trying to represent things numerically. We want to show weights of things. Oftentimes we go to things like length and size and that sort of thing, or depth of color. In this case, really the story is, what would the two colors in the top left corner of the page look like to someone who has different forms of color blindness? So color blindness basically comes down to what cones are you lacking in your eyes? And based on that, you perceive colors differently. So rather than just describe things in the percentages, as seen below, the percentages of men and women, and you can see that color blindness more heavily affects men than women, it would be really easy to put together a series of bar charts showing that, like, hey, a lot more men. But at the end of the day, by showing you how people perceive color blindness, that gets way more attention to the topic than just telling you about it. Because now by looking at those colors and seeing, wow, I didn't realize that red and green both come off as sort of muddy brownish colors to people with the upper right or bottom left corners. That can change how you think about color and how you're going to use it. Or alternatively, thinking about the marketplace. This is from a video game data set I found off Kaggle, and this is about my 5th approach on it. I took multiple go-rounds at it, which is another topic I'll bring up. But in addition to talking about different companies as they enter and exit the market and what their sales volume is like, wouldn't it be fun to look at the entire volume of the market and when it hit max expansion, which is around 2008, and even then mostly due to sales of the Nintendo Wii, which only then expanded the market so greatly because it came bundled with a game. So this is a stream graph, something I would never use for business, and it's extremely difficult to make. It took me 14 tries, but at the end of the day, it was highly effective for communicating market entries and exits of things like Sega and Atari, but then also the expansion and contraction of companies like Nintendo and Sony. Embrace ambiguity. So dyslexic kids are operating in a realm where they are not the norm. They are trying to learn something that their brain actively is kind of trying to reject. As such, they have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And within that, sometimes they have to recognize that they're going to be tackling stuff from a different angle than everyone else, much like the Orton-Gillingham method, how they can't learn to read and write the same way as neurologically typical people. Sometimes you might be looking at a data problem and there's not really a conventional means to tackle it. This is the life and times of Marty McFly. So in the Back to the Future franchise, Marty, across 3 different films, travels to different periods in history. So when we think about time travel, we think about someone as moving sort of forward and back in time, right? But when you think about time in that way, time sort of becomes a geographic locale, because while they're moving forward and back in history, which here is represented as the vertical aspect of the chart, they're also moving forward in their own lifespan continually. So they're not getting any younger, they're continuing to age, which is represented by the rightward movement of the chart. So this was actually my idea of how do I express this movie and this movie series in terms of a chart. You could go with just the strict back and forward idea of time as they're moving throughout history, but that's not the full expression of time as Marty's traveling, since he is also aging. So I remember I actually showed this to Steve Wexler as I was working on it, and he was like, it kind of works, which was about as good as I could ask for on such a wacky chart. Really, at the end of the day, people gave me a lot more flack about the background color, which turned out to be very controversial. This is how I expressed a choose your own adventure book, which I actually have right here on my desk. Space and beyond. So I've always been curious about the concept of a multiverse. You know, we're seeing it more and more in popular televised and cinematic fiction, but it's always been a staple of various genre fictions, right? But a multiverse is an expression of branching realities. So every choice made splinters off into a new reality, which if you imagine all the people making choices every day, all the time, there's myriad possibilities. But within a choose your own adventure book, as you make choices, you start at one page represented in the upper left-hand corner. And as you move down, the more choices you make. And you move right as your page numbers split off. You branch out into different possibilities of where the story could be going. So this one book in particular had 42 different potential endings. And I wanted to figure out how could I represent this in Tableau. And there are tools that are better for networking charts, which might be the obvious starting point for something like this. But I decided to try to do in Tableau as best I could. And what I ended up doing, figuring out how to do all the mappings, was starting at the endings and reversing back to the beginning. So rather than starting at the beginning and trying to figure out how to get to each ending, which turned out to be very painful, by starting at the end and working backwards, I was able to get to the result I wanted much easier. And if we're going to talk about confusing, we have to bring up one of my favorite directors, Christopher Nolan. So I would show you my Tenet graph, which I did recently, but I know a lot of people haven't seen that, and I don't want to be stoned for showing you the how the plot works and what's going on. But I figure Inception's 10 years old, so you're good. Inception is Christopher Nolan's movie about a dream heist, and within the dream, there are dream within a dream sequences. So as they go down into one dream, they'll enter a second person's dream who came down with them. And this chart is my explanation of how that plot of that movie works. Again, this is the example of visualizing something that isn't really a data set. Like, you couldn't give me numbers and I could plug this in. But again, data isn't just numbers. We have maps, which often are not numeric in their nature. You're showing relational positions. And what I'm showing here is relational positions of people within the dream structure of the movie Inception. So as they go down, they descend further and further into the dream, and then ultimately they come back up through the various tiers of the dream as well, ultimately exiting, possibly with the exception of one character who we don't really know for certain what happened with them. So my third tip, and I touched on this briefly earlier, but reiterate relentlessly. Wow, I'll try saying that 3 times fast. So when you're at work, oftentimes you're hitting the same data frequently, unless you are strictly like a consultant and you're only touching a data set one time and moving on. You might work with the same data set for years. And in doing that, you learn a lot about the data and try lots of different approaches and learn lots of different things. So particularly if you're working on passion projects, wouldn't it be cool to go back and try another pass at something that you did previously? What would you learn from that? So right here is a pass I did on a birthday data set for the United States. This is a purely interactive chart, which allows you to type in 2 names and decide whether they're male or female, since a lot of names like Michael could be male or female. I actually have a friend named Michael who's female. And in doing so, it'll show you those 2 names and the birth rates stacked on top of each other as these area charts. You can actually even change the header on it and make it like a wedding invitation or a birthday card or whatever. So it's fun like that. But this was my first pass looking at this data set. I wanted to find a novel way to think about this and think about the relationships between different people and when their names were the most popular. This is a second version using that same data set. I was thinking about Lou Vega's Mambo No. 5 and how he sings about a lot of different ladies' names in it. And I was wondering, I wonder how old the girls were in that song. So using the birth data set, I was able to look at when these names are most popular, and you can see Mary down there was massive as these overlay each other in a joy plot setup. But many of these names were at their most popular, which would have made them unlikely to actually be featured in the song. Like Jessica, if Jessica was born around the peak of that name, would have only been 12 when Mambo No. 5 came out. So probably unlikely. And Mary, on the other hand, would have been like 78 if she were born in peak Mary years. So again, a different way of looking at the same data set and thinking about it differently. And lastly, this was my third pass at that same data set. And this thing scrolls down quite a bit as I tackle different generations. But it's interesting to see for male and female names, how there's been a sprawl in first diversity of names as more and more varied names become popular throughout the generations, but also to see how they change in terms of what was the most popular name for each generation. So here again, I used the same chart type for all three. I used area charts, but all in different formats, all in novel ways, and all thinking about the topic in a different manner. So I was able to get that much more out of a single data set by pivoting how I thought about it each time. So let me ask you, 1997, Steve Jobs is asking you to think differently. And in his case, it's a marketing gimmick. He wants you to pick up an Apple computer because Apple is not the norm. Apple is outside the box and PC is inside the box. But think about thinking differently and think about what makes your perspective different. What makes your take on things different? Not because you're trying to be unique, but because you are unique. We all came from different backgrounds. We all have different thought processes, and we're all different people with different interests and different backgrounds. So what are you going to bring to your project that makes it uniquely you? Thank you. So it looked like we might have had some questions.
If anyone does have questions for Zach, if you could put them in the Q&A, that'd be the best place. I'm looking through the chat as well, and I don't see any public or private chats to the panelists, but if you can put them in the Q&A. I do not see any open questions at the moment.
I did have one, and unfortunately, as a panelist, I am not allowed to use the Q&A. I'm too special for that, apparently.
Go for it.
But Zach, would love your thoughts on how to practice. You kind of talked about, this aspect of drilling to kind of retain information, but even I think regardless of condition, I think there's a lot of utility in practicing getting reps. How would you suggest kind of getting reps at using your creative energy or thinking of these things in a different way?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I would suggest community exercises like Makeover Monday. So one of the things, particularly when you're early on trying to develop yourself in data visualization, and I guess more specifically in a tool like Tableau, is you're enthused by all the things you can possibly do, right? Like it's kind of limitless. You're limited only by your skill and your creativity. So one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to create a chart with 10,000 packed bubbles and 75 colors. And you're going to be really excited because it looks really cool, but it's not going to say that much. So one of the best things you can do is get in reps by basically making projects. And a project like Makeover Monday, where the idea is, hey, do a 1 hour project, is great because for one thing, you're drilling on speed. You might not think about it at the time, but there's going to be at some point when your boss comes to you and it's like, quick, we have a fire, we need something now. The time you put in, doing small projects like that are going to help you prepare for the idea of standing something up quickly. But on top of that, it helps you work through the bad ideas quicker. Malcolm Gladwell talks about, the 10,000 hours, which I think even since then he's retracted, it's not 10,000, but to become an expert, you have to put in time. It's not just knowledge or skill or intellect. But by putting in the time and doing projects and making mistakes, those are less mistakes you make later and better ideas you have later because you've gotten out some of your worst instincts. Very few people come in fully formed and are just know exactly what they want to do and are great at it. But go look at my public portfolio. A lot of my early work is not something I'm proud of, but you keep it up there because it shows progression both for you and for other people.
Sorry, I'm laughing, Zach, because when you said the bubble charts with 10 different colors, that was absolutely me. I'm very thankful. And I do love putting it on Tableau Public so you can go back and look. But thankfully, that chart didn't hit Tableau Public. But that's really great feedback.
Speaking of your public content, someone did suggest that I post a link to it. So Zach, I'll do that since it's public. That's cool.
That sounds great. So Kevin said, what resources related to exercises do you recommend for leaders of teams or company as centers of excellence. So, I mean, honestly, there's all these resources out there, whether it be Makeover Monday or Workout Wednesday or Sports Viz Sunday. There's these things that are sort of baked into the greater Tableau community that are 100% free, 100% voluntary, and honestly have a great support mechanism of all the people that are actively engaged in doing them. And I think learning in data viz is very difficult to do on your own. By getting out there and showing your work, even though it can be an act of vulnerability to put stuff out there, just like if you were doing a work review at your job, it helps you get beyond some of those bad ideas. And it also gets you more comfortable with the idea of receiving feedback, which is one of the most important skills you can have as an analyst, because you're going to present projects. You're going to love what you made and you're going to be deeply invested in it because you made it, right? It's your thing. And then someone's going to say, I don't love this. This doesn't work for me and it doesn't tell me what I need. And if you're married to it because it's your creation, you can be shattered. But if you look at it like, hey, my objective here is to deliver something that meets the objectives, gets this person what they need, and creates the best thing, you're going to be better at receiving feedback. And in the same way, you know, receiving feedback on stuff that isn't work critical to your life helps prepare you for that.
Excellent. Well, I think that's the end of the questions we have at the moment. If someone has a question later for Zach, maybe we can rope him back in, but we will move on for now. Thank you, Zach, very much. That was really interesting. And you can see those vids that he was showing and more on his Tableau public profile, which I've given you the link to. With that, we're going to pass it to Sedale. You are next.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Alex, for having me, but also thanks. I'm really ecstatic to be in this particular spot because there's so much that Zach brought up that I will reiterate, but also things that it inspired. So a lot to build on here. So let me share. Hopefully everybody can see that. Just call out if you can't see the screen. But perfect. Thanks, Alex. So cool. So this talk is hopefully going to do a couple of things. I'm happy to be here and talk about my Tableau journey, but what I really want to do is focus on this in a way that helps you build your own journey. And I hope this also applies to anyone, even if you're new to Tableau or you're kind of in the middle or even farther down in your Tableau journey. I hope there's something here for everybody. So I will introduce myself just so that everyone knows the context that we come at this from. I'll talk a bit about the inspiration for this talk, including, people like Zach and others who I've spoken to over my time. And then I'll spend the most time talking about things I wish I knew. And it's kind of my way of organizing the journey. No one's Tableau journey, no one's journey period is linear, but I think there are some buckets that we can think about our journeys in that I hope will help you guys along the way. So in terms of myself, I am currently a director of insights and intelligence at a company called Purple Strategies in the DC area. We are a prototypical DC shop. We deal in public affairs and reputation management for massive corporations. So think Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. And my job is using digital data to drive the companies around the topics they care about, around the people they care about, and things of that sort. So that's kind of my day job. I joined the DC Tableau user group in 2019, honestly, as a function of the meetings they had were a 2-minute walk away from where I was working at the time. So I kind of stumbled into the community that way, but it was, clandestine, and I was really, really fortunate because it got me to the place that I am now. Through that and some hangouts online, and then quarantine hitting in 2020, I got my first certification in June. So the first one is the desktop specialist. If you're interested in certifications, happy to talk about that. Was also named the Tableau Public Featured Author in August, which is just an awesome thing to do. And I echo Zach on the Tableau public comments. I think it's a phenomenal resource. I use a lot of the weekly and monthly challenges to build out my profile. So a great resource there. I'm also a part of the Community Equity Task Force, and it's a new task force. There's around 12 of us, and our job is really to help advance equity and diversity for not only the data community, but also data itself. So a lot of the work that we do is around, yes, diversity and equity in the typical senses that you think of it, representation, making sure that our ambassadors and Zen masters and tug leaders, speakers are diversely represented, but also thinking about how the data that you all use also represents diverse individuals, stakeholders, data, et cetera. So there's a lot, to be done. And I'm really excited to be a part of that group and happy to share any perspective I have on that. And then lastly, I started the analytics tug with Annabelle in December. So we're having our next meeting. If you want to join on next Wednesday, we'll be having that next meeting where we'll be talking about maps, parameter actions, and some interactivity pieces in an upcoming meeting. When I'm not talking about data and Tableau and those sorts of things, I'm usually talking about sports, DC sports in particular, as well as the University of Virginia. Wine, I'm a huge person in the wine generally. I love learning about it. And then social impact, sometimes in that order, sometimes not. So this talk was inspired by a panel I was a part of for TC20, so the Tableau conference last year. And it included myself, Ethan Lang from Playfair Data, and Michelle Kosmicki. And it was a really awesome event. It was really awesome to kind of rethink about my Tableau journey in that way and start to really try to put some organization around where I came, how I got to where I got in this journey of mine. But I also think, the conversations I've had with the data fam really inspired a lot of these pieces. Also a lot of different individuals from, Zen masters and ambassadors to people in healthcare and people in higher education, people in sports, lots of different jobs and things like that. And so that's really inspired this talk. And then, listening to other people's journeys. So getting to hear how everyone got to this point, no matter where they are now, I think is really, really interesting. And I think it's been really helpful for me starting to develop how and where I show up within the Tableau space as well. So we're gonna bucket this journey into 3 spaces that I think are tremendously helpful when it comes to building your journey, no matter where you are in the process. Most of us show up into this tool through Vizzing, through developing visuals. So we will talk about that and my experience to that so far. We'll talk about the community, which I cannot speak highly enough of, and I kind of already did to some extent, but I'll really double down on using the community to advance your journey because I just believe in that quite a bit. But I think one other layer that I'll talk to is Tableau. And so in addition to the data community, there's kind of this layer, which are the folks at Tableau that are really engaged and really helping us all build our data literacy, build our data skills, and advance our career. And so I want to, touch on that for a bit as well, as the third pillar of which I think you can build your career. So, I kind of messed up the animations here because I created this on the fly. But the Viz on my left, which I think we've talked about quite a bit without knowing it, is my first Viz. It is roughly, to Zach's point, 75 bubbles, only one color though. And it doesn't say a ton. I think, it was my attempt at just making something, which I all go through at the very beginning of our journey, just trying to use the tool in some way. And I was very interested in seeing Zach's version. So I took these screen grabs literally while he was presenting. Here's Zach's use of this exact same data set. So you can kind of see what's possible with this data set and what I started with. And I think it speaks to a few things. So it's not just the technical proficiency. Obviously, Zach was at a different part in his Tableau journey when he developed these Vizzes as when I developed this Viz with the same data set. But the point is that there are more pieces to the Viz puzzle than just the technicals, just being able to develop. And part of that is in storytelling. What is the story you want to tell when you're developing a Viz? I think the other elements of it are it's the details that you want, the statements that you want to make. So in one of these versions on the right, kind of using music and names to develop an exploration of how the names happened over time. In one case, we're looking at generations on Zach's. And I think that's the piece, if we're looking at my first Viz, those are the things that are missing more than I just didn't know how to use the tool, which I didn't. But I think, in addition to that, I didn't approach that Viz thinking about what I wanted to say. I just wanted to create something. And that's not a bad thing necessarily at that stage, but I think when you're in your journey, I think really consider what are you trying to say in your Viz, in addition to what are the elements that help you say it? What are the technical pieces that help you derive an insight or derive a story? I think that the next level of that is what do you ultimately want to say? So with that, I created this version, which was inspired by the Mambo No. 5 Viz. This is a song by DMX for those that are not into hip hop. But it's basically the same exploration of that data set with the names mentioned in that DMX song, which was done for an iQuest Viz, also completely different thought. And the difference there, again, is partially I know to do more stuff when I developed this Viz versus the other one, but it's even more so I started with an interest in, I wonder if these names, which aren't typical, if you look at the bottom, if you look at that Viz, I can throw a link to this Viz later. These are atypical names. And so I was really curious when you consider Mambo No. 5, Angela, Pamela, Monica, Erica, Mary, Jessica, names that you would probably expect. There aren't nearly as many of those sorts of names in the DMX song. And so I was very curious how this data set would hold up against a different set of names. And that's ultimately what created what this story became. And so really interesting, a really fun Viz. I don't have a ton of music Vizes on my Tableau Public, but a different interpretation, a different thought process is what created this Viz, not just the technicals. And then this is just a more recent example of a Viz that I was creating more in the business space and the healthcare space, but same sort of line of thinking, which is what was I trying to say and what was I trying to have people do? And this was more of an exploratory Viz where I wanted people to engage in some of the details when it came to COVID-19. And so this actually developed this in April. So the original goal was just to have people understand what was even happening. But then as the virus continued to take shape, I think part of it became how to also explore the magnitude of what was happening with the virus, starting to document some of the hot spots. We talk a lot in the news about California, then we talked about Florida, and New York was a hot spot for a while. And so this was my way of kind of cataloging what was happening in there. So again, a lot of technical pieces. There's hidden containers, there's animations, there's filters, there's actions happening. But more importantly, there are intentional goals for each individual part of this Viz. There's something I'm trying to accomplish. And I think that's the best way to consider Vizzing is what are the stories you want to tell? What are the statements you want to make? And then you go into how do I want to make those statements? What do I need in order to make the statements? All right. To the community, which is my favorite part and something I'm very passionate about. Maybe you have seen me speak somewhere before, maybe not, but I try to spend as much time speaking as I can. And I've just been lucky enough that people keep inviting me, which is awesome. When I started, though, I was essentially working by myself. I was working at a company. So in the PR world, which is a consultant focused world, there's not as much of us in those spaces. So the company I was at the time, no one had used Tableau before. I only heard about it through some exploration of myself in the data and analysis world and the social listening world. But no one was using the tool. And it was only, a couple of years later where I was even at a company where other people had used the tool before. And then, by that ended up getting involved in the community. So I highly recommend you skip this step entirely. I spent roughly a year and a half just kind of muddling myself, figuring things out, running into whatever I could run into. And I think that you can move a lot faster with some help. And DataFam is awesome. If you're not aware already, there are lots and lots of people that are interested and willing to help you with whatever it is you're trying to figure out, whatever problem you're trying to solve. And they're all over. I mean, obviously, you all have each other in Chicago and in the North Suburban Chicago and then the main Chicago one. But everyone's kind of all over the place. Even if you look at this, I think we're in just about every continent. Katie, Eric, and I are here in the US. Priya is in the UK and Europe. Heidi and Sarah in Europe. And the top middle, Fee Gordon, who also works at JLL along with Zach, is in Australia. And I can't remember what time it was where she was, but Sam and Fred are also in Australia. And I believe Mark may be somewhere in the Middle East. But regardless, lots of people in lots of places. And so there's always someone around that can be really helpful to you. And so I would highly encourage you to, if you can't name a couple of people right now that you could go to ask a question or to help you through a problem, I would really focus on that as part of the way that you build your journey, because I think it's a really critical piece. And it's going to move you a lot faster than you will move by yourself. And then the last piece is when it comes to working with Tableau. I think that's a layer that I don't think people think enough of. And in my view, and I will take this moment to issue a disclaimer. This is my opinion. I do not work at Tableau. Tableau is not paying me. It's just my view and my view alone. But in my view, it appears to me that Tableau their business model is designed to where they get more out of us when we get more out of them. And you feel it in a lot of the different things that happen through Tableau and the Tableau initiative. And I would take advantage of that. I think Tableau is highly interested in helping you build your career as analysts in the space. And I think when you can use that, you benefit greatly from it. And obviously you have a company behind you that has a significant amount of resources to help you. I did not do that to start out. I spent a lot of time visiting by myself. I tried to basically create my own community by reaching out one-on-one to different people and different individuals, and basically one at a time located people that were doing what I wanted to do. And I think it was still a great experience. And I was lucky enough to be in a DC Tableau user group that had Chantilly, who's a Zen master and just really awesome at what she does. Eric Balish, who was an ambassador and really awesome. And so I got lucky in that the few people I started with were some really talented individuals. But whether you have that or not, I think using the Tableau infrastructure can get you into some really interesting and great places. And so it's been really fun working on a couple of Tableau initiatives and helping them as a speaker or as an ambassador or with the equity task force and things like that, where I've gotten to do and learn and grow through that structure in addition to the greater community. And they have, as you can see, well, it's not listed in this because it was still a secret at the time, but this news that has already been launched is that there's now a community hub for Tableau. So I would head over, I believe it's just tableau.com/community. Hopefully someone can put in the chat the link that I'm referring to. But there's basically a community hub where you can learn about other people, other events, and other things happening. And I'd really take a lot of advantage of what that structure is, because I think there's a lot of benefit to it. So I say all of that, and I used, hopefully you all heard a lot of examples that you can use in your own space, but I want to put a finer point on how to manage your own journey so that it's not just about me and what I've done. The first thing, I think, finding what you love to Viz is a great way to get started. And Zach talked about the community initiatives. I also stole this from a talk he gave at a Viz Connect around Viz What You Love, and I kind of added some points to it. I think find what you love, but also think about the data sets that you're super interested in. So I do not work in healthcare, but I find healthcare very interesting, and I find the data around healthcare very interesting in the diversity of it. So I find that I end up visiting more about health, mental health, survey data. I think I mentioned I'm a psych major, so that's really interesting to me. But it may not, I don't know that I, in my regular life, constantly seek out information related to those topics. It's just the data sets that I love to viz. And I think you will find as you go on in your journey, there may be things you enjoy. You may love to watch sports, but you may not care enough about the data related to sports to create vizzes around it. So I think starting to manage that journey is smart. I think finding your own data fam, there are lots of people that do lots of things. There are database folks and people that are highly technical and can write Python code and SQL queries and all that great stuff. There are very design focused people. Priya, who I talked about, is a fantastic at designing Vizzes and the analysis, but she has a particular focus in design. There are people that are interested in Tableau server, people interested in Tableau prep, desktop. So finding the people that are interested in the things you're interested in will really help you along the way, and you can find mentors through that. And then getting involved in the Tableau initiatives, wherever they happen. If there are things that Tableau is putting on, I think there's usually lots of really interesting people that are going to be there as well. So consider those sorts of things. Whatever you do, don't go it alone. I think the thing I will say, and I believe it's in this slide as well, is that basically no one that you admire in the Tableau community did this by themselves. There's someone somewhere that helped supported them and helps make them who they were. So, don't feel bad about also using people to get better at what you're trying to get better at. And people aren't just interested, they're eager to help you build your journey. So use those people. Use your local tug, use Tableau, use the communities that you have to find your path forward. Those are always great things to do. And then enjoy the journey. I think if you're not having fun, then I think that you're probably doing the wrong thing. There's lots of things here that are fun and interesting and useful. So be prepared to enjoy the ride as you go. With that, happy to answer. I saw some chats. I'll see if there are any questions, but feel free to reach out to me later. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's my Tableau public as well. Honestly, as long as you remember my first name and it has something to do with data, it will be me. There are very few Sedales out there, so it shouldn't be too tough to find me. But thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sedale. Please use the Q&A if you've got a question. For Sedale, we'll leave it open for a minute here while we see if anyone's got a question for him. And you already know how to reach him otherwise later if you want to, but we'll look for a minute here to see if we get any questions at the moment. Thanks for the presentation, by the way. It is good for people to see the progression and to see, your bubble chart, for example, right?
Yeah.
And good to see how far you can come, with just some time and some help and a community.
Sure.
There is a question out there. It says, similar question I asked Zach, suggestion on resources for folks that lead Tableau teams.
So I think the best, I'm trying to think about specific resources, but I will say, sorry, I think that was Kevin. Let me go back. I believe it was Kevin that was asking the question. Yes, Kevin. I would highly recommend reaching out to the team, two teams. One, the folks at JLL, and I think Fee Gordon, I think it's her job to develop trainings and the Center of Excellence and things like that. And she has built a great structure for how to lead Tableau teams. The second one are the folks at JP Morgan. There are a couple of guys there, Will Perkins, Zach Gase is another. So if you reach out to me, I can also connect you with these individuals. But they are also developing a very impressive Center of Excellence related to Tableau. And they do a lot in the way. I bring them up not just because there are extremely talented people at those companies. I bring them up because they are people focused on exactly that question, which is how do we develop resources to lead our programs at Tableau? I also just happen to know that they would be willing to talk to you and help you with that specific question. Because I don't lead a full team of Tableau users, I would suggest going to those people rather than listening to my educated guesses on how that would work.
There's another one out there. Can you tell us more about the analytics tug?
Yeah, sure. And I can post a link just after this as well. So the analytics tug is primarily focused on Tableau desktop. Like that's our remit as far as the Tableau is concerned, is helping discuss better ways to use Tableau desktop for analytics, better ways to focus. We will, when there are, I imagine when there are updates to Tableau, we will be able to at least get people on to come to those sorts of events. We are always looking for speakers just like Alex. So if you're interested in talking about Tableau and analytics, please let me know. But our main remit is how do we think about Tableau for analysis and insights? So we won't focus too much on design. I wouldn't give this talk that I'm giving right now probably for the analytics tug. I would focus more on demos. I might talk pieces of it, but we're pretty narrowly focused. I would liken our tug to the healthcare tug, which I'm actually speaking at in March, the veterans tug, and tugs like that rather than the local ones, because anyone can be anywhere. Annabelle is in Zurich, who is the other leader of that tug. As long as you have a focus on analytics and you use Tableau to analyze data, which most of us do, that's kind of the way we're thinking about it. So that's it for now. It's new, so it'll evolve. And so if you have questions or thoughts or perspectives, please let me know, because we're continuing to build this out as we go. Cool.
All right, I don't see any remaining questions at the moment. So thank you again, Sedale, for presenting. That was really cool. And we know where to find you. And thanks again. And we're going to pass it on to Jennifer.
Oh man, that means it's go time.
That's right.
All right, let me quickly share my screen. So hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Dawes. For those of you that don't know me, I am going to be talking today about dynamic drop-down menus in Tableau, what they are, how do we create them, and what is the business case to use them. And I'm going to walk you through a business case that I actually did for my company, Unifund, and how did I troubleshoot that. I can't take full credit for this. I had some help on this project from my now boss, Kevin Flerledge. I'm sure you know him, and I know he's on the call today. He and his twin brother have a fantastic blog, flerledgetwins.com, and he did write a blog post about the exact example that I'm going to walk you through today. So be sure to check out the blog, and this the viz that I'm going to share with you is on my Tableau public profile if you want to dig in a little deeper after this call. So before I dive in, a little bit about me so you know who this person is talking to you. I am from Cincinnati, Ohio. I have a background in HR, a master's in HR. I've spent the last 10 plus years of my career working in HR roles. I was first a payroll specialist for Paycor, then moved on to become a compensation analyst at Macy's. and had some of my career spent as an HR generalist for Federal Home Loan Bank and then Unifund. And basically a generalist for the HR world, just does jack of all trades, master of none, but I also served as an unofficial HR analyst for both of those roles. It wasn't until last year that I officially transitioned as an analyst and Tableau developer at Unifund. And to talk a little bit about that, I think in my Tableau journey, it's always fun to say that I initially started out with Tableau and we were in a dating relationship. And it wasn't until probably the last year that I took that relationship a little more serious and I used Tableau full-time for my role. Beyond that, I'm also a co-founder of Her Data with Danushki De Oliveira. We just launched this platform last year. And the idea is we want to be able to create a platform for women to feel empowered and engaged and connected in the data community. It's no secret that a large number of the data community are male. So we just wanted to create an opportunity where we can sprinkle a little extra sunshine on those females out there that are rock stars. So more about that, and I can certainly share the link towards the end of my presentation here. Outside of my education and my work life, I have these 4 monsters that live in my home. And so all 4 boys, and as you probably are noticing, there are 2 sets of twins here. The photo's a little old, so I have 4-year-olds and 1-year-olds. And to say that we have a busy and loud household is an absolute understatement. I kind of at one point toyed with the idea of posting a video in this so you can kind of get a sense of my life, but spared you the noise. But just note, yeah, outside of my work environment, I have a full-time job as a mom. So they're a lot of fun though. And I really liked that Zach showed the weather. So I thought I would include a picture. 14 inches, this was as of this morning. I don't know why, I just thought it would be kind of funny to see. I don't know where the snow has come from. It's continuing to fall as we're sitting here. So it's a great thing that we can all work remote. There's no snow days for us currently. So there you go. The viz that I'm going to talk about today, again, this was something I originally created for Unifund, but I then posted to Tableau Public. All of the data here and on my Tableau Public profile is just a made up company and made up names. I did anonymize it. I didn't want to post Unifund employees out there, but this is the viz I'm going to walk through. How I created this and some of the ins and outs about it. I'm going to be focusing a lot about the end user experience because ultimately that was a big goal for the viz that I created here. So before I do that, the business case, because that's the all important piece, right? And I've worked now for Unifund for about 5 years. Most of you know Jeff Schaefer. He is a Zen Master. I think he's going on his 5th year as a Zen Master. He is our COO. I work with Kevin Flerledge, also now a Zen Master, and Danushki De Oliveira. And as a culture, when I was working in the HR field and HR department for Unifund, we thought it would be a good idea to do the Strength Finder assessment. If you're not familiar with it, I'll talk a little bit about what that is. But the VP of HR said, you know, I want a tool that I can see all of the results of the organization, but I want to be able to highlight different groups. The trick here became, you know, the end user might be a bit different. Who's looking at the data and what they want to highlight could change. And the data was, you know, I had 100 employees. I needed to see 500 results, and I needed to see them across 4 categories. So just looking at the Strength Finder to give you a little perspective before we dig in here. It's an online assessment, and if you haven't taken this before, I strongly recommend it. I'm not one for all of those personality tests that are out there, but as an HR professional and as somebody that has taken this, I find it highly insightful. I've done it now twice. It's a quick assessment. It helps you discover your natural strengths. You know, you run through maybe a 20-minute exam of which do you prefer, this or this, and at the end, they give you your top 5 strengths across these 4 categories. I share that this is very insightful because it actually, for me, was a funny story. The first time I took this, I was working as an analyst at Macy's, and I always felt, it was one of those moments where you thought, I just don't think I fit in. You know, I love my job, but I don't seem to really feel connected to the people that I'm working with. And it was a couple weeks after that that we took this assessment, and as a team of analysts of 40 of us, we came together as a team and we wanted to really dig deep into the data and examine what the results were. As I kind of show you the viz, you'll quickly realize these 4 different categories that there are for your strengths. But it was myself and one other person that were an influencer, and not just an influencer. One of my top strengths was woo. And to spare you the long definition, basically I was a cheerleader. So I got dubbed the name as a meerkat in my team, because I was constantly poking my head over the cubicles, saying good morning to people. And at the time, I just took that as maybe I don't fit in, but it wasn't until after taking this assessment and really understanding the data and really understanding the dynamics of who we were as a team, that it was, instead of being critical of myself, I realized, this is kind of cool. I'm working with a bunch of people that are very focused on tasks, and they're very focused on heads down, and they're introverts. Instead of realizing that as something that makes me odd and different, how do I lean into that? And that's the exact premise behind the Strength Finder. We live in a culture where everything that you have as a weakness, you should focus on improving that. Whereas the Strength Finder is all about ditch that idea, look at your strengths, and how do we lean into that as a career path? How do you harness your strengths to put yourself in a good position to have more success down the road? So basically, like I was mentioning, the result are 5 strengths across these 4 categories when you take the assessment. Highly recommend it. If I can find a link, I'm happy to send it to you if anybody's interested. But that's what we did as an organization. That's what we're going to talk about today. So originally, this was my creation, and I'm going to walk you through it and introduce you to the viz really quickly. But before doing that, I will tell you, I mentioned this dating relationship I had with a Tableau before walking into a serious relationship. And I make that in jest because I think you have to decide when you're wanting to learn something and you're wanting to grow and develop. You have to decide first and foremost, how serious are you? You want to learn a new language? Great. But are you going to dive right in? Or are you just going to go at your own pace? And I think when I was in this dating relationship, it was more of a hobby. I wasn't every day working in Tableau. I wasn't pressing the limits and really trying to challenge myself with various different techniques within Tableau. And these updates that Tableau would put out there, it was meaningless. I can remember we tried to do a Unifund tug, and Kevin came out, was talking about, oh, Tableau now has transparent sheets. Meant nothing to me at the time. Now it's really powerful. I share that with you because when I first created this, the version that I was using, I was really limited by what was available at the time. But it never hurts to pay attention to these updates, because you never know when one of those updates suddenly solves a business case problem that you have. And that was exactly the situation that I had for this visualization. So now getting into what this is and how to absorb it. I have 100 employees, so this is my count up here of distinct names. And then I have this navigation option, which is going to be kind of the critical piece of what I'm going to talk about today. And then down the side here, we have these 4 categories. Basically, that's how do these strengths break out? And executing, strength, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And again, there's 500 strengths that we're looking at here. 31% are going to be the executing strengths, 17 are going to be influencing, and then on down. And while that solved half of the equation for me, I got an idea of, okay, we don't have a lot of influencers or influencing strengths across the organization. The question I really couldn't seem to settle with was, but where are those people? Let's say you have a sales team. Maybe they make up 90% of your influencing strengths. What if you're trying to move culture? What if as a manager, you continuously have conflict with a few set of employees? It happens, right? This isn't a perfect world, and we're all a bit different. So how do you utilize this information, and what do you do with it? And who are those individuals? So with that, I had a distinct count because I thought it was important to note, of the employees, how many have at least one strength in executing or influencing? And there the stories suddenly become unfolded, because of 17% of 500 means one thing, but then 47 distinct employees have an influencing strength. And what all this means is, what if you have one person and all 5 of their strengths are influencing? So I was able to kind of get a better snapshot there, but it wasn't until I started laying out in detail what the top strengths on through the 5th strengths were for individuals that it really started to highlight the big picture. Also looking down the line here, we have a summary or a sum total of what those are across each of the individual strengths for each category. And then at the top, I created a bar chart just summing those strengths across the 4 categories. So now that we kind of have an idea of how this is working, I want to show you the user experience. Because again, that's kind of what became the obstacle and a bit clunky, and the solution I really am excited to share with you. So initially what I created was a parameter, and it's just 4 text fields with how I thought the user would want to explore the data. Do they want to look at an individual department or a manager? And the reason I had both options was in our organization, I could have a manager that manages multiple departments or an executive, or I could have a department that maybe was constantly changing. Either way, or I wanted to look at an individual employee. So I have 4 parameters, which created 4 drop menus for the end user. And basically, okay, so I want to select department. I have another sheet that's basically trying to tell the individual which one's available and which one's active, and they can highlight which team they want to see. And suddenly, really cool, I'm able to highlight those individuals within the IT team, and I know a little bit more information about that team. And not only that, the key takeaway for this viz was that part to whole. Now the individuals that aren't part of IT are gray, and I'm now just highlighting the individuals that are part of the IT team. This looked all good and well, but after some user testing, it seemed a bit clunky, because once you really get in here, you can really muck it up rather quickly when you have multiple things in action. And I think the important piece and my important learning with creating this is you just don't know the skill set of the individual that's going to be using what you create. You can have some really technically savvy individuals that might even call you out on a couple of mistakes, or you might have individuals that just need extra help. So creating something that is really easy and user-friendly is very, very important. So now to dive into what was going on in the background here. So like I showed you, I had 4 parameters that were creating my controls, and then I had a highlight calculation. And I want to show you this just so you get a perspective of what I had done before I show you the really cool and improved way I did this. So the highlight action is a bit to absorb. It was a bit clunky to write. And to be perfectly honest, yes, it worked, but it wasn't the best. It was the best approach at the time, but in the end, probably wasn't the best. So basically it's evaluating my parameter, I highlight by as all, the color by category, but then it tried to individually, if it's evaluate each available option. So if it's employee, what are we doing with that? And then if it's gonna be department, what are we doing with that? Again, it worked, but keep that in mind, what that calculation looked like as we walk into my now solution. And what I'm about to show, and again, back to that, paying attention to the Tableau updates, 2020.3, I believe it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, where sets became available. And it was when that became available that suddenly it opened a door of so many more opportunities for this viz. And I want to quickly just show you what went from 4 drop menus. I am now able to create a dynamic drop menu using 3 simple calculations. It not only improves the user experience, but as a Tableau analyst, it was so much easier to write the calculations. And not only that, should somebody else need to look at this viz and understand it, it's a lot more easy to understand and interpret. So 4 easy calculations. Basically, if you're familiar with a case statement, and maybe you are, maybe you aren't, it's probably one of my favorite calculations there are out there in Tableau world, because as I was first learning Tableau, the syntax is really what got me. I was an Excel proficient individual. I knew how to use Excel, you tell me and I would do it. And kind of translating that knowledge into Tableau was a bit clunky for me at start because the syntax can be just very different. But a case statement to me became so easy. Basically, you can take any pill, write out case. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, highlight whatever it is, hit describe, and you have your list of available values. Well, now you just need to evaluate what do you want to happen, or what is the statement for each of these available options. Again, I love case statements. You can use these for color options, grouping, aliasing items. But what I didn't think about until this viz is what a wonderful world you can actually create for this case statement, switching in and out what is in what a certain value should be. So basically, if I'm selecting none, then just think about the category being executing and so on. But if the end user selects department, I want you to evaluate the list of departments available. If they select manager, then manager. So basically, we're going to toggle between several different pills within the data set, depending on what they're selecting. By itself, it's meaningless. But wrapping that calculation in a set suddenly becomes really powerful. And if you are aware, you can simply right-click to create another field, calculated field, or throw this into a set. And that's exactly what I did with this next calculation. I created a set off of that case statement. And to better demonstrate exactly what's happening on the back end, I'm going to show you over here because I do have those calculations shown on my, my card here. So this original parameter, same one that I used from the original version that I created, I'm going to switch to department. Now you notice for the highlight detail, that case statement is saying return the values in departments. Same thing's going to happen if I switch to manager. Now it's the case statement is saying put into the set anybody that's on the manager list. What you might be seeing here in the calculations and certainly within the results is I made up this data so that I could publish it. And absolutely, I have some null values. Not really sure how I did that, but either way, luckily when I created this for Unifund, I didn't have that issue, but when you make up data, you're probably gonna have some null values. So what's going on here, the line is basically trying to treat those null values because more than likely I didn't assign a manager or a department for those made up people. But either way, it's effectively doing what I need it to do. I want one option where you're deciding how you wanna navigate, and then the second option is an updated dynamic list of those detailed choices. So that is working exactly how I need it to. But the one last piece that's important here, let me clear this out. The one last step is I want to be able to highlight. I could be done if I'm going to simply filter. And in fact, I'll show you on the viz how I use this to filter, but I want to be able to highlight those individuals. So let's take what I just did and throw a highlight or a color calculation together. So as simple as if highlight by, that original parameter is all, color it by category. Else, if it's in that set, because that highlight detail is a set based on that case statement, then highlight by category. Else, well, we got that null stuff going on, else gray. So really simple calculation when you compare to the original calculation I had to write, which was a little bit much to absorb, but really simple. If with throwing this onto color and throwing my set onto detail, you take a step back here, I'll show you now how simple this becomes. Okay, I wanna navigate by department. Let's look at customer service, and there. I can quickly see I have 23 people in customer service, 17 of which have at least one strength in executing, but only 8 have something in influencing. That's really key, because what if I want to lead a project and I need somebody that has strong communication skills as a manager? Now I know maybe who those individuals are and who to go to. Something I haven't shown you that's going on in the background here is I have a tooltip with the individuals' names. So when I highlight over them, it's highlighting all 5 of their strengths. So for the manager, this becomes really powerful. And then also that big picture here is that part to whole. I'm able to see, wow, for customer service, their strengths across the 4 categories look a bit different than the organization as a whole, whereas they have a lot more relationship building, strategic thinking than the rest of the organization is more heavily weighted on executing. So any way that I can leverage that, or could that create any potential communication challenges? I don't know, but certainly helpful to kind of take a big look at. So again, to highlight, I was able to throw this onto color, and for all of these other fields, I'm basically using the same calculation, but I'm only filtering the data for the number fields. And before I move on, you might see my screen. Anybody that may have presented anything in Tableau, as I was getting ready for this presentation and I had PowerPoint and I had Tableau and I had all these different things going, I was on a call with Jeff Schaefer and he said, why don't you just throw everything into Tableau? So my other little quick tip here, if you have to present and you're going to be into Tableau looking at calculations, all of these slides are just simply images on a dashboard and I'm just able to arrow through really quickly. I thought that was like really a cool tip. You might not think so, but I thought that was really cool to share. Anyways, so last but not least, again, check out the blog that Kevin wrote. It walks you through it. You know, we're all different users and we're all different learners. Sometimes for me, seeing a video, it really helps to be able to hear somebody talk through it, but you might be somebody that you just really need to read through it and you need the technical explanation of everything. Go out, read the blog that Kevin wrote. Happy to drop that in the chat. They're really helpful individuals. As Sedale and Zach said, connect with your community. We have one of the best communities in terms of leveraging for knowledge. I can't say that enough. I went from dating Tableau to using it as a hobby to now using it full time only within the last year. And I cannot tell you enough how supported I have felt. It's been life-changing to be able to tackle switching from an HR career into an analyst role and feel fully supported by the community that we have. So I can't express that enough. And then also, I'm happy to connect with anybody. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, Tableau Public.
Yeah.
Sure to reach out. Also, her data. Check out
132.
I absolutely, sorry. Janishki and I absolutely love connecting with the data community. We posted a couple of various different learning opportunities. If you want to learn to web scrape or if you want to learn Tableau prep, we've had some fantastic people on to talk about their skill sets. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have. That's all.
Thank you very much, Jen. There's a question from Chris to please drop the URL link in the chat. I'm not sure which one he's talking about. I'll drop the herd data in there. I don't know if you've got the link for the dynamically changing your drop-down menus at hand.
I can definitely send that.
I put your public profile link and the herd data in there.
Yeah, and absolutely, I will be happy to send. I think I have this as an image, but I will send in just a minute the Kevin's blog post, unless Kevin sees it and gets to it faster than I am. I know he probably will, but I'm happy to share that.
Yeah, if I could throw a question out, well, I don't want to step on anyone else that has questions, but while we set that up, I would love to follow up on the thing you just said, which was your kind of very quick ascension from Tableau dabbler to full-time analyst. Can you kind of speak to that process? If someone goes into Tableau and they know they eventually want to be an analyst, but obviously they don't yet have the resume for it, how have you made those two things happen?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And honestly, sometimes it just happens so quickly for me and I'm so grateful. I really do think it's the people that you surround yourself with, right? You know, if you want to be successful in anything, and a manager of mine years ago would say, just the part that you want. So maybe for a while I was faking it before I could make it, but it definitely became surround myself with the people that were going to be the most influential. I think I'm very blessed in the fact that one story I didn't tell, maybe this is relevant, but you know, coming into working at Unifund with Jeff Schaefer and Danushki and Kevin Flerlich, you know, here I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed and HR specialist thinking, I'm going to bring metrics to this organization without any idea of what Tableau was, without any idea of what a Zen Master was. And I had it all pretty on a spreadsheet thinking, this is going to be great. They're going to be so impressed by me. And the first thing that Jeff said was, that's great, but let's get it into Tableau. I think for me and my personal journey, you know, you can't be afraid to mess up. You can't be afraid to, you know, go out there on Tableau Public. If you see something that you're just mind blown by, hopefully you can download their workbook. I don't know if you've gone out there to Tableau Public and you've seen that almost everything I've published, I've made available for downloads. Certainly this Viz. Download it, play with it. If you break it, who cares? But certainly don't be afraid to reach out to those individuals. I think when I first started in Tableau, I think I had the idea in the back of my mind that this would be a fun and fantastic career path for me. I've always been somebody that's had that creative mindset with the analytical and never really knew where to go with that. So I think that's where I bounced from one thing to the next because I never really found that fit for myself. But when I jumped into Tableau, I think I had the idea that this would be a great career path for myself, but never really thought I measured up, if that makes sense. I was looking at the Tableau public world thinking, my gosh, this community is so tight and connected. Look at what they're publishing. I don't even know how to do this. I think the intimidation factor for me was huge. I think you have to get it out of your own head though. I think Sedale, you said that fantastic when you talked about the bubbles that you created, and Zach was just on a different journey. He was in a different point in his path with Tableau. So it wasn't fair to look at your work compared to his. And that's just it. I think for me, I have to get out of my own head, focus on what I can learn, connect with the people that are experts in the field, and don't be afraid to break something. I hope that answers in a long-winded answered question.
No, I think that's really helpful.
I can't see, were there any other questions? No?
Yeah, I don't see another question at the moment. Let me see here. I have a question. How did one company get so much awesome Tableau talent in one place? You guys are like the all-star team over there. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I owe all of my credit to Jeff Schaefer, coming to Unifund again, thinking that I was the expert of Excel and that was going to impress somebody without knowing that they used Tableau or what Tableau was. But he has been a huge influence. And now Kevin joining a couple of years later, he has been a huge influence. So I think the fact that I have the opportunity to work with people that are passionate, all it does is create more passion and more excitement. So not to mention we're a little competitive, each of us. So it's a little fun.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I see one more has popped in there from Kevin. Kevin, who's your favorite coworker?
I knew you were going to ask that question, and I'm going to say Jeff Schaefer. I don't know if you guys, Zach actually did a Ask Them Anything session with Ken and Kevin, and me and Danushki thought we were being really funny by saying, who is your favorite coworker, Kevin? Because he had to answer the question. He was on the spot. Who's your favorite coworker, Kevin? And he said Jeff Schaefer. So I'm going to go with Jeff Schaefer, Kevin. He is my boss, though, so maybe I should think about that. I don't know.
It makes sense.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well, hopefully that's helpful. And again, happy to send out any other information if anybody else has questions. Thank you again for having me, though. I really appreciate this. This was fun.
Right back at you. We're happy to have the Cincinnati contingent come in. It's awesome. Okay, well, with that is our last speaker for the day. We do have one more session, which is the only mildly popular trivia challenge, but we're going to do it anyway for today. Thank you again, Jen, for presenting, and Zach and Sedale as well. We've had a great lineup today. It's our own little all-star group. With that, let's see here. I need to find, all of a sudden, I don't know where I am. I need to find my link to the trivia. And as soon as I find that, we will do it. Where did it go? Yes, it's Kahoot. So we are doing a Kahoot together. All right, here we go. I'm going to put I'll share my screen here just so you can see what I'm doing. Screen 1. And there you go. You should see my Kahoot there. I'm going to put the link in the chat, kahoot.it. Kahoot. Oh, sorry. The first link had too many O's in it. Kahoot. It's kahoot.it. So if you go there, type in that game pin, you can join the game pin, and then I'm going to get it started. I'm going to, let's see here, I'll copy this game pin. Game pin right there. We're waiting for any players, so I'm going to say sorry, I lost audio for just a moment. I think you all should be able to see. Am I still sharing my screen? I am not. Yes, I want to share my screen. Can a panelist let me know that you can hear me? Since my audio did drop, I want to make sure that it came back correctly.
I can hear you, Zach. Or I'm sorry.
Okay, great. All right, so we've got 28 people in there. That's a good, healthy number. And I don't see the number moving. We'll give people, there's 29. Just 28, 29, it's going back and forth. People changing their minds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click. Sorry, we have 29 again. It's kind of floating. Maybe someone's having internet issues. We're going to click start. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to show this page or not, but I'm going to show it for the moment until I know if it's the wrong thing. Okay, great. There's your first question. All right, 8 major versions since 2019. So that's the correct answer. 11 of you got that right. We're going to go to the next question. Lynn's in the lead. Not Kevin. Which new feature supports mapping in 2020.4?
Oh.
I don't even know if Kevin entered it. You know, I'm just decided to pick out him just for fun. We all love Kevin.
Yes.
All right, multiple mark slayers. Almost everybody got that right. We got a lot of smarty pantses in here today. MSN Tableau. What does / allow you to do in calculated fields?
Ooh.
Oh. Now I copied this quiz from, well, most of it from another quiz from another group. So I'll give that shout out to a different group. Multi-line comments right there, about half. Got that one right. But another community had most of these quiz questions in theirs, and I chose to reuse some of them. So again, some of these are easier than others. This one. You know, what I'd really like to do is, I'm already on the phone, so I don't know that I can add in the sound, but I'd love to do, have like the Jeopardy music playing in the background here.
Do, 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 do.
Exactly. Where in relationships would you specify a join?
Oh, God.
I think the last one should have said Noodles and Company. Just, you know. Physical layer. All right, hold on. I'm just going to pull this off over there. Look at our leaderboard. We've got a lot of the same people in the lead. Let's see if it changes here. Which chart is a tree map? This should be an easier one. They're not all super hard. Although I'd rather eat the first one, but I definitely don't want it on a Viz. Correct. That is a tree map. We have a few people with different answers, but let's see where we are. Yeah, that one wasn't likely to change. I will give you guys a hint that the last question is not entirely fair, but you know, it'll be non-Viz related. In a data pane filter, what does D stand for?
This is depressing. I'm doing so terribly.
Josh is rocking it. IMTM is right there. MSN, Lynn, and Barry. A lot of the same people are in the lead here. How many marks types are there? If you can hear the music now?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Answer was 12. A lot of people got that one wrong. Sedale on the board. All right, only 2 questions left. How many show me chart templates are there? $24. Very few people got that one right. All right, I'm going to stop the music because we're on the last question. This is the last one, and this is more of a North Suburban Chicago question than it is a Tableau one. So put your Chicago hats on for this one. Let's see. Dale's still within range. Josh is still rocking it. Here we go. This one's a puzzle. You have to reorder those in a manner where the best food is on the left and the worst on the right. As I said, this one isn't necessarily fair, but that's okay.
I think I'm finishing last. It's okay.
That thing that is usually covered by her phone has finally made an appearance.
Honestly, I'm not even sure where the music's coming from anymore. Whoop. Let's see what it shows us for the answer. Okay, we're in Chicago. The correct answer is going to be Chicago deep dish, of course. We're staying with Chicago theme and putting Portillo's next. And it doesn't matter what's in the third place. Last place is always New York pizza. And that's just a very Chicago answer. So there you go. All right, well, with that, let's see who our big winners are. We did have 28 to 30 contestants. So with that, we are going to have podium finisher prizes. So the top 3 are going to get prizes. So let's see what we got. In third place, PM. Second place, I am PM. I hope that's a different person. And first place, Josh, who is rocking it throughout most of it. So nice work. And then we see some runners up there, MSN, Tableau, and Lynn. Nice work, you guys. Here, let me take a shot of that just so I keep track of who's who. If you, oh, I'll put this off on the side for a moment. I'm going to write down the, you can find me on LinkedIn, but if you want to send me a note, I'm going to just make this bigger. Then we can connect with you to send you some Tableau swag. But there's my email. And that actually anybody is welcome to use it, so I'll put it in the chat. Not a big deal. Oh, I don't need to send it. I need to send it to everybody. So that's a contact email you can send to me for any other kind of questions, but certainly for the winners. Thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you for everyone for playing our little quiz. It looks like we got a decent bit of attendance on that one, even though the poll wasn't very kind to it. So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for presenters for coming and presenting, and we will see you next time. It is February right now. If I look at my calendar, we usually like to do the middle month of each quarter, you know, try and stay away from end of quarters for finance people, right? That sort of thing. So, you know, we would be looking at a next meeting in May. We don't have the date yet, but it would most likely be like May 13th would be the first choice, right? But we'll see how things line up for speakers. And thank you again, and we will see you soon.